Ooh, who would have thought there was different types of negative thoughts? I thought there was just one. It's helpful to understand some of the kinds of negative thoughts that you might attack you from day to day. When you recognize these kind of thoughts, realize that they're irrational thoughts that need to be challenged and replaced. Here are some of the most common kinds of negative thoughts and how to eliminate them. So always or never thinking. Well, in reality, very few things are always or never. If you think something is always going to happen, or will never get what you want, you're doomed from the outset. When you use all or nothing words such as always, never, everyone, no one, every time, and everything, you're usually wrong. Here are some examples of always or never thinking. I never get a raise. I never get a break. Everyone takes advantage of me. No one ever cuts me any slack. My employees never listen to me. Every time I risk, I get slammed. I never get any time for myself. They're always making fun of me. Nobody cares if I live or die. When you find yourself thinking always or never thoughts, replace them with what is the real true reality of the situation. For example, you can replace you always take advantage of me with I get angry when you take advantage of me. But I know that you've treated me fairly in the past and that you will again. So remember, focusing on the negative is another point. Some people focus only on the bad and never on the good in a situation. When Jack Canfield was conducting trainings for high school teachers, he noticed that most of the teachers had met a pattern, had a pattern, and focused on the negative all the time. If they taught a lesson and 30 kids got it, but 4 didn't, they would focus on the 4 who didn't get it, and they would feel bad rather than focus on the 26 that did get it and feel good. So learn to look for the positive. Not only will it help you feel better, but it'll also be a critical component of creating your success and what you actually want. Recently, one of Jack's friends had told him he had seen an interview with a multimillionaire on television who described the turning point in his career that morning when he asked all his staff to talk about one good thing that had occurred during the past week. At first, all that came up were more complaints, problems, and difficulties. Finally, one employee commented that the UPS driver who delivered the packages to the offices had applied to college and was going back to school to get his degree, and how inspired he was that a man's commitment to his further education in his pursuit of his life's dream. And slowly, one other employee and then another came up with something else that was positive to share as well. Soon this became a part of every meeting, and eventually they had to end the meetings before every positive thing could be recounted. The entire attitude of the company changed from focusing on the negative to focusing on the good, and the business took off and grew exponentially from that moment onwards. So learn to play the appreciation game by looking for the things to appreciate in every situation. A powerful exercise for building your appreciation muscle is to take 7 minutes every morning and write down all the things that you appreciate in life. I'd recommend this as a daily ritual for the rest of your life because it will accelerate your performance. When you actively seek the positive, you become more appreciative and optimistic, and the requirement for attracting more good and creating the life of your dreams and looking for the good. Jack's wife recently was in an automobile accident. She drove through an intersection where the traffic light was inoperative because of the power outage and hit another car turning across her lane. She could have succumbed to a multitude of automatic negative thoughts. What's wrong with me? I should have been paying attention. I shouldn't have been out driving when the power was out. Instead, she focused on the positive. She focused on the fact that she was so lucky to be alive and actually relatively unhurt, and the driver was alive as well. Thank God I was in such a safe car. I'm so glad the police came fast as they did. It's amazing how many people were there to help. This was the real wake-up call in the situation. Another negative way of thinking is catastrophic predicting. In catastrophic predicting, you create the worst possible scenario in your mind and then you act if it actually has some certainty to it. This could include predicting your sales prospects won't be interested in your product. The person you are attracted to will reject you when you request to go out on a date. Your boss won't give you a raise, or your plane you're flying will crash. Replace, she'll probably laugh at me if I ask her out for a date with, I don't know what she'll do, but she might say yes. Another negative way of thinking is mind reading. Oh boy, I'm not a mind reader, you know. I've heard myself often say that. You're a mind reader when you believe that you know what another person is thinking, even though he or she hasn't even told you. You know you're a mind reader when you're thinking thoughts such as, he's mad at me, she doesn't like me, he's going to say no, he's going to fire me. Replace mind reading with the truth. I don't know what he's thinking unless I ask him. Maybe he's just having a bad day. Remember, unless you're a psychic, you can't read anyone else's mind. You don't ever know what they're really thinking unless they tell you or you ask them. So check out your assumptions by asking, I'm imagining you might be mad at me. Are you? Remember the phrase, when in doubt, check it out. To remind yourself to ask rather than assume you know. Another one of negative thinking is guilt tripping. Guilt happens when you think the words such as should, must, ought, or have to. Here are some examples. I ought to spend more time studying for my bar exam. I should spend more time at home with my kids. I have to exercise more. As soon as you feel like you should be doing something, you're creating an internal resistance to doing it. So stop guilt tripping. You'll be more effective if you replace guilt tripping with phrases such as, I want to. It supports my goals to. I'd be smart to. It's in my best interest to. Guilt is never productive. It will stand in the way of achieving your goals. So get rid of the emotional barrier to your success. Another one to do is labeling. Labeling is attaching negative labels to yourself and someone else. It's a form of shorthand that stops you from clearly making finer distinctions that help you be more effective in your day-to-day life. Some examples of negative labels are jerk, idiot, arrogant, irresponsible. When you use a label like this, you're lumping yourself and someone else into the category of all the jerks and idiots you've ever known. And that makes you more difficult to deal with than the person or the situation as a unique person or experience they are. Challenge these thoughts with, I'm stupid, with, what is it I just did less brilliant than before? But I'm still a smart person. So stop labeling yourself. Virginia Satir once said, all meaning is self-created. And your final one is personalizing. You personalize when you invest in a neutral event with a personal meaning. An example of this is, Kevin hasn't called me back. He must be mad at me. Or, we lost the Vanderbilt account. It must be my fault. I should have spent more time on the proposal. The truth is that there are many other possible explanations for other people's actions besides the negative reasons your automatic negative thoughts come up with. For example, Kevin may not have called you back because he was sick or out of town or overwhelmed of his own priorities. You never really know why other people do what they do until you physically ask them. So stop labeling yourself with negative thoughts, and I'll see you tomorrow.